Yo, Papa here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 89 of the Ron and Brian podcast. I'm Ron, as always, joined by the man who doesn't need a buzzer to determine what balls he likes, Brian. Brian, how are you today, sir?
We are a little frustrated. We've been better. We've been worse. But overall, I'm going to put a positive spin on my life. I'm going to dwell on the positives. I'm going to look past the obstacles that life throws at me on a regular basis. And I'm going to say that I'm doing well.
All right. Well, a jam-packed episode this week. Let's start things off. Let's check in with the Doppler 6900 weather machine.
Live from the Doppler 6900 Weather Center on the Ron and Brian podcast.
So as you all know, I'm broadcasting from Philadelphia. Brian, you are up in the city that never sleeps, New York City. Talk to me about your weather at the moment.
Right now, we've got some sleet. It looks like it's coming down a little bit. Not so good, a little hazy. But there is some snow coming down. I believe we're in the forecast of some freezing rain a little bit later, but so far we're doing all right.
I was out earlier trying to get the food shopping done before the storm, got caught in it. We had some angry hail earlier. Angry hail. Roads froze over quickly. We've had a little bit of snow, still more snow. I'm calling this storm of the century. Do you feel the same way?
That is a bold call. I think it's here in New York. I can say that our trusted mayor Billy De Blasio, he is toasting his bagels. He's eating his pizza with a knife and fork, and he is preparing this city to be properly protected from everything that this storm is throwing at it. I feel safe and secure.
Can I say something, not to get off of the weather topic, but I was unaware prior to this week how egregious an offense toasting a bagel was.
Which is odd, at least as somebody who orders bagels in New York, and it's not a Jew thing. But it's so common when you order a bagel for them to ask you if you want to toast it or not.
And I don't know if the last time I had a bagel that wasn't toasted.
Well, see, this to me is the rule. If you're getting it at a place that makes the bagels there, I ask the question of, do I need to? Because to me, a bagel that is coming fresh out of the oven does not need to be toasted.
Fair statement. I'll give you that.
Now, if this bagel was made a couple hours ago and it's been sitting in a bin, then I do want it toasted.
Listen, the last time I came to see you in New York, before I hopped on a train to come home, I had a classic New York bagel at a little shop there in Penn Station. I believe its name was Dunkin' Donuts. So they toasted it, and I got to say, quite the experience.
That is my favorite New York bagel place.
Yes. Well, anyway, stay safe out there. I feel with this storm of the century, there will be multiple fatalities. So stay inside, stay off the roads. Don't be the dick that orders a pizza to be delivered during this storm. Like people do that, and it just drives me crazy.
You're not a fan?
Don't make the poor delivery driver risk his life for the dollar tip you might give him.
Okay,
just my opinion. Brian, normally we would move right into Drink of the Week, but I couldn't help but notice that there was not a Drink of the Week poll again this week, and I'm just curious. I mean, is your nose still out of joint? Did your polling equipment from the Ivanka Trump company not come in? Talk to me about what happened.
Ron, I think you, of all people, can understand the sensitivity of what has happened to me over the past 2.5 weeks when it comes to the Drink of the Week poll. As loyal listeners to the podcast are aware, I hired a Ukrainian investigator who goes by the name of Viktor Yushchenko. He had all the right credentials. I hired him to look into possible fraud on our Facebook poll for the drink of the week during the previous week, when somehow a beverage that contained elderflower managed to obtain some votes from some suspicious Facebook accounts. And you can agree with me that they're suspicious, right?
I still don't agree with you. I mean, I guess I understand kind of where you're coming from, but I would argue the level of suspicion.
I'm not accusing you per se, Ron. I'm not coming after you. I don't want you to think that that's what's going on here. But what I will say was that week, there was a second account that voted using your name.
Again, had it been two John Smiths, I don't think you would have questioned it. I think just because I have somewhat of a unique name, you're casting aspersions on me.
Well, that was also coupled with the fact that a deciding vote was placed at the last minute by an account whose name was Rush N Asset, and this account was quickly deactivated shortly after the poll.
Again, I can't comment as to what Facebook does or does not do.
Ron, I do not want you to feel defensive in any way. I'm not accusing you of this.
All right.
What I am saying is that I hired a investigator to investigate the Drink of the Week poll, possible fraud amongst, I believe it was the Russians.
You always believe it's the Russians, though.
It took a very dark turn. As last week I was frightened by the fact that I had not heard from Mr. Yushchenko. I had not, he had recently visited Tehran in hopes of finding a missing Facebook server that had last been seen in Chappaqua, New York, near the home of Hillary and Bill Clinton. Anyway, I would like to report I'm very saddened. Thoughts and prayers are going out to the family of Viktor Yushchenko. He happened to have been on Ukrainian flight 752 that was, how do I say this, blown out of the air over the sky in Iran on January 8th, 2020. Viktor Yushchenko, you did everything I asked you to do, except to report back. We may never know what happened.
May never know it all. Well, hopefully next week Brian will get over this and get back to Drink of the Week. Last week, we had received a sponsorship for Drink of the Week from Papa John, not the pizza chain Papa John's, but Papa John himself. This week, we did receive a cease and desist letter from Papa John's Pizza. I think maybe they feel Papa John shouldn't still be using that name, and most certainly did not want us to use it. So, we put the sponsorship back up online, letting people know that it was available. And surprisingly enough, and I think this will show you how open-minded we are, how bipartisan we are. This week's Drink of the Week is actually sponsored by the Trump 2020 campaign. I don't know if your involvement with Ivanka Trump has anything to do with that, but again, they have signed on, and let's move on to the Trump 2020 Drink of the Week.
President Trump, how do you like your margaritas?
Tremendously big and tremendously wet.
Drink of the week.
President Trump, do you want more shots?
What a stupid question.
Mr. President, these guys over here are saying you can't do a proper keg stand.
You are fake news.
Drink of the week. Drink of the week. Drink of the week.
Trump 2020, because there's a whole lot more pussies to be grabbed.
All right, Brian. I know. I was a little surprised by the content they wanted included, but hey, listen, if your check clears, which fingers crossed it will, we will do the theme that you'd like. Brian, what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking a Sam 76.
Ooh, still coming out of that Sam Adams pack, huh?
I've got 2 left, and I need this to hold me over until I receive my Tavor box.
Fair enough. So I brought a couple drinks to the table. As you know, when it's a cold day, I like to do a nice cup of coffee with a shot of espresso liqueur from Evian. So I'm doing that right now. And then Philadelphia's own Yards Brewing Company, their Love Stout, which is one of my favorite to begin with. Well, they make another version of that called the Love Chocolate Stout. It's a stout brewed with chocolate and vanilla. Irresistibly smooth, they say. Let me just get a little...
That actually does look like a delicious beer.
Oh, it is. They put it out around Valentine's Day each year, and it's just one of my favorites. How's your Sam 76?
Crisp. Exactly
Crisp?
what I was looking for right now. I mean,
All
we're
right.
recording this on a Saturday afternoon, which is rare. So I'm looking for something light that is not going to affect my ability to, stay up tonight.
I don't argue with that. All right, let's keep things rolling along. We've got This Week in Racism.
This
Week.
in
Racism.
racism.
So Canadians' own Patricia Zammit got win number 2 this past week. Wasn't even much of a matchup. Her competition did not get a single vote. Brian, you had called this one. Again, not much of a matchup. And unfortunately, really didn't see a ton of racism this week. I mean, there was a college student in Texas who called for, quote, all the black people to be shot at a New Jersey high school. There was a New Jersey pizzeria who fired a manager accused of a anti-Semitic tirade towards a delivery driver who had asked for a Jewish holiday off. And they actually, what I loved about it is they included the screenshot of text that this manager sent to the delivery driver. So the delivery driver says, "I'm celebrating the Jewish holiday tomorrow night," and to which the manager responds, "Me and Dylan are coming tomorrow night. Fuck the Jewish, put them on fire, like Hitler was trying to do. He had a point." So yeah. So that particular gentleman has been fired. And then in addition to that, sticking in New York, there was a video of a man making a swastika out of MTA flyers inside of a subway station. A little craziness. But again, not anyone that we felt led to could meet the level of racism that Patricia Zammit is at with her 2 wins so far. Some of you have commented the racism hasn't been as strong since 2019, so we don't want her to get any cheap wins. We don't want her to get a number 1 seed that she does not deserve. So we are going to send her to the bench this week, and we'll see if there's any better competition that we can have next week. Brian, your thoughts?
Well, I'd like to think that the storm of the century has knocked out racism completely. Unfortunately, I fear that it's going to be back next week with ferocity. One of the things that, if you remember last year, is that there were definitely some dips in terms of levels of racism, but ooh, Nelly, did they come back strong?
Yes, right. So I'm sure this is just a phase that the country is going through, and people will go back to being horrible.
I assume so.
All right, let's keep on keeping on. Find out what's bothering us this week.
Ron and Brian's Beef of the Week.
Brian, you seem to have a relatively calm week. I can't imagine that there is anything major bothering you, but I'll throw it over to you. What's your beef?
Windows.
Windows, like the kind
Microsoft
that
Windows.
keep the elements out, like it's the window open and the snow is
Nope.
coming in?
Nope.
No?
My issue is with Microsoft Windows.
Oh, the computer program.
Yes.
And what's your issue with it?
My issue is the fact that they recently put out their monthly update, which did not seem to want to be a seamless process on my laptop. Would that be a nice way of putting it?
I mean, I would say you had some challenges with it, hence the reason we're recording on a Saturday.
This thing fucked me so hard, and I mean that in the most literal sense possible. We set aside a night we were going to do our recording. I was prepared. I sat down. I set up all my equipment. I was ready to go. I was raring to go, if you don't mind. And next thing I know, nothing was working. Every program I tried to open just froze. Looking at the diagnostics on my machine basically said this thing is jammed, it's fried. Little research went in, and I figured out that it was because my computer had crashed while in the middle of an update. And and the way these computers are set up, and I don't know if Macs have the same problem, but if you're in the middle of an update and it gets interrupted, there's absolutely nothing you can do until this thing is resolved. I pretty much on Thursday set this thing up to after we gave up, and let's face it, you and I were on Skype for about an hour and a half.
We were doing everything we could to fix the situation.
And you were a supportive partner. I want you to know something. You never raised your voice. You spoke to me in a calm tone. You made me feel that things were going to be okay. And that's so important.
I didn't want you to hurt, Brian.
Oh, I hurt. I hurt badly. But on Friday morning, I set this thing to, I restarted it and I set it to install. And when I came home from work at the end of the day, it was still in the process of updating.
It seems like it should be quicker than that.
I still do not have complete faith that this thing is up and running right now. I expect the audio of this to be jammed.
God willing, hopefully this will be online later, and our fans will know that your computer is actually working. So,
well, we're going to find out. We'll find out. Well, thank you for your support once again, Ron. Because had this been reversed, I would have reamed you terribly to the point where you would have felt shame.
And that's how I like it. So
I know you do.
It's the way it works. My beef this week, Brian, air travel. As you know, I was supposed to be headed out to Omaha last week on Saturday, connecting through Chicago, and flight got canceled out of Philly a couple hours. Didn't even leave for the airport. It just canceled. I was supposed to fly out on Saturday morning. Couldn't get rebooked till Sunday night, so I left Philly at like 9 o'clock Sunday night, got into Omaha around midnight their time. But this is what I don't get is for air travel in this day and age is they were aware a few days ahead of time about the potential weather issue, because I got an email from American Airlines that said, listen, you're connecting through Chicago, there's going to be a weather issue, you can change your flight within the next 3 hours and we won't charge you for it. And they just didn't have another flight that worked for me. But my thing is like, who's flying with the destination of Chicago. You know who is just connecting to go other places in the country. If you know 3 or 4 days ahead of time that you might not be able to get in Chicago, why are you not then able to make alternate arrangements for those people whose final destination is not Chicago? Ton of airplanes, ton of airports, and, and I get it. Like I'm sure it's a profitability thing. But it's just such a pain in the ass. There was a woman who was going to the same conference that I did, and she needed to be there Sunday morning. Her flight got canceled. She ended up having to fly from Philadelphia to Houston on American, rent a car, drive to the other airport in Houston to get onto a Southwest flight to get to the conference on Sunday.
Jesus.
And the best of it is American was gonna charge her for changing her flight, because one of their big things is you can't change your destination city. So the fact that she was not ending up in Omaha, they were still gonna charge like a couple $100. And she was like, you can't get me to Omaha when I need to get there. And they were like, well, we're gonna have to talk to somebody about that. I don't know. It just seems, and again, it's the usual stuff like I'm crammed in a seat. They charge you for everything now. The new thing I saw is now you can pay to board the plane sooner.
What?
So if you want to move, like, how they board you in groups?
Of course.
So, like when I checked in, they're like, hey, for another $30, you can board a few groups sooner, and then you might actually get an overhead bin. So it's like, They know where they fall short, and they just try and like wrangle every single dollar out of you that they can.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it was fucked up.
So now, not only are you sitting there paying extra for economy plus business minor, business major, but now they're saying, hey, if you want to pay extra, we'll let you on early.
Yes, pretty much.
I will say this: air travel has become a dehumanizing process.
It's absolutely horrible. I'm thankful this conference next year will be in Baltimore, so I can just hop on a train and go down there.
How was the conference, if I may ask?
I mean, so you know how where you have to travel for work and you're going to a city that you normally would never have thought about visiting, and you get there and you are pleasantly surprised by the city that you're visiting?
Yes.
Omaha is not like that. Omaha is exactly how you would picture Omaha to be. A lot of flat land, not a lot going on downtown. Thankfully, the conference was in town, and the national championship game was going on Monday, because apparently a lot of restaurants don't usually even open. But it was insane. Like, normally you're like, oh, if I forget something that I've packed, I'm sure there's something near the hotel where I can run to like a CVS or a Rite Aid or whatever. No, nothing like that downtown.
Oh.
Like,
but
people were
like
literally driving to Iowa to get things because it was closer to go across the bridge into Iowa than to travel within Montana and get to where you were going. Or Nebraska. I don't even know where the fuck I was. I mean, I had to look on a map to be like, where am I exactly?
But it looked like you did find a nice little brewery to go.
I did find a place called Craft Sliders and Beer, which was, I mean, they've got like this 2-block area of downtown that they've started to gentrify as people have started to live downtown. And yeah, I had some great sliders, had some great beers, but I couldn't picture living there. Just absolutely couldn't picture it.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Everyone was very nice, don't get me wrong. The people in Omaha, over the top nice.
Right.
Only time I've ever had a TSA experience that was positive. Like, even the TSA agents were like very polite and respectful and nice. Like, it was ridiculous. But
interesting.
I could see retiring there maybe when you don't have to do anything. But as far as like living there when you're still an active individual, I don't know how people do it. I think you have to really be into outdoors activities to like Omaha.
Well, what outdoors activities do they have there?
I mean, in January, none. But they have a lot of, climbing, hiking, whitewater rafting, rodeos, dude ranches, the whole 9 yards.
Do they have some lynchings in there?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe some cross burnings?
It is kind of, it's one of those flyover states, and I think we all know what goes on there.
A lot of red states.
Yes.
A lot of Trump supporters.
Yeah, and that was the one thing that was surprising is there was actually someone walking around on the marketplace floor, one of the tour operators that had a "Make America Great" cap on again, and literally everyone avoided having a conversation with him. Like, he would sit down in an area and people would just get up and move away.
All right. So I've got a serious question. I'm not intentionally changing the subject.
Okay.
So how is it that this guy is going to be reelected?
Because that's how bad the Democrats are.
Because even in Omaha, you are finding at a tourist centric conference, even there Trump is hated. And you and I both know that he's going to get reelected.
It's unfortunate, but true. Again, I think that shows you the disconnect that the Democratic Party has with the percentage of people in America that you need to connect to. Where Donald Trump succeeds, and you might not like it, but he connects with the seamy underbelly of America, with the disenfranchised, with the people that feel they deserve better, with the racists, with the white supremacists. He connects with those people. And then you look at the Democratic Party and how it's splintered into the Bernie Bros and the Yang Gang. And, and that's where I think the challenge becomes is, in 2016, everybody in the GOP hated Donald Trump. I mean, you can get clips of Lindsey Graham and, all these other people saying horrible things about it. But then when he got that nomination, they all managed to unite around him, and he ends up winning the election. Whereas if you look on the Democratic side of the ticket, can you honestly see once it's down to a single candidate, and let's say it's not Elizabeth Warren, and it's not Bernie Sanders, and it's not Andrew Yang or Pete Buttigieg, can you see them being able to combine those support bases enough to defeat Donald Trump?
No. I think the Democrats tend to be much more principled.
Yes.
I think one of the things that I'm genuinely surprised with the Republicans, at least over the past couple, 3 years now, is that once Trump became the man, how there literally became a almost a pathological devotion to showing support for him. There's, the amount of criticism that he gets from the Republican Party and the conservative voices is so minuscule. It's shocking when some like third-rate Republican representative says something where they may question what he's doing.
And while Trump may be horrible at hiring people, his campaign staff is good at hiring people. I mean, you look at some of the grassroots organizing through social media and what have you that they were able to do. I mean, look, they're even advertising on Drink of the Week on this podcast. That shows
true.
You how deep a dive that they're willing to take to win this election.
When you think about it, that actually just brought it home. Because, I think, it's pretty clear you're on the left side of the political spectrum. I think it's very clear that I'm not even on the political spectrum. And yet they were, Trump 2020 was able to get us to say, yes, we would like you to sponsor our Drink of the Week poll.
Elizabeth Warren's not reaching out, and she's shown that she likes to have a good beer in her kitchen. Bernie Sanders will kick back with a nice Rob Roy from time to time. He has not reached out. Andrew Yang, surprisingly enough, beer pong. But again, has not reached out. So we welcome any candidate from the left to sponsor Drink of the Week moving forward.
Speaking of reaching out, did you see the attempt that the media was trying to make into an issue? There was a Democratic debate this past week, and that really just shows you how the level of interest now. There was a debate this week. You and I didn't even watch it.
Yeah, I could really. I'm at the point where I could care less about the debates because let's get through Iowa. Let's see who gets support in Iowa. At least it's down to, there was, 6 candidates on the stage for the last debate? Yeah. So at least it is getting to the point where it's a more manageable debate to follow. But until we really get an idea as to who people are going to support when actual voting has to be done, then we can go from there.
So there was so right at the end of the debate, Elizabeth Warren approaches Bernie Sanders. Bernie extends his hand in an attempt to shake Elizabeth Warren's hand, and she clasps her hands together while speaking to him in a way seemingly to rebuff his attempt to reconcile after they viciously went after each other this week.
Well, and there also was a report that came out prior to the debate that, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders had a dinner together, I think, back in 2018, and Bernie Sanders made the statement that a woman could not be president, could not defeat Donald Trump in 2020. So I think that kind of fueled that interaction as well.
Well, hold on a second. I think there's you just made 2 very different statements. One is that a woman can't be president, and versus can a woman defeat Donald Trump?
Well, I'm not. I think in the context of where Bernie Sanders made the comment is he wasn't saying in general that a woman couldn't be president, but the conversation was apparently in relation to the 2020 election and that a woman could not defeat Donald Trump.
Does he seem to be aware that he can't defeat Donald Trump?
Well, and it was a very interesting point that Elizabeth Warren made during the debate. Is she mentioned that the women on the stage, her and Amy Klobuchar, are the only people on the stage to not have lost an election, whereas all the men on the stage have lost multiple elections. A cheap shot, but an interesting one. Then,
no, that's a valid statement. That's actually very good. And I think the woman who has the greatest. Why are you laughing?
Because I have a feeling I know where this is going.
Where it's. I got to talk about my girlfriend.
Okay.
Tulsi.
Tulsi Gabbard still hanging in there, even after Cory Booker out of the race, Marianne Williamson out of the race. Tulsi still hanging tough.
Now, I reached out to the Gabbard campaign this past week to see if Tulsi was interested in sponsoring my Beef of the Week.
Did they remind you about the restraining order?
That's you knew exactly what that's exactly what they said. They said that they quickly were able to recognize that this was my 48th different account that I have used to reach out to Tulsi, and they were not happy. They contacted the FBI, Secret Service. I was visited and told never, once again, not to contact the campaign in any way. However, all joking aside, I think that her, I want to say centrist views, but they really are logical and non-ideological. She, to me, is the most rational voice in the campaign right now.
We shall see if she can gain any traction. I will be very telling.
She won a push-up contest against a man this past week. Did you see that?
I missed that part, no question.
She was at some campaign stop, and some guy was, talking shit, and he challenged her to a push-up contest. And she said, "Yeah, sure, I'm down." Took off her blazer, and they were doing push-ups, and she did more than he did.
She's an impressive specimen. I'll give you that much. So more importantly, though, let's move on to football. We had the divisional round this past week. Brian, can I first say props to you for that Kansas City pick? Kansas City was giving 10. It was a lot of points, but you were like, you know what? I don't care. I'm taking it. And then Chiefs, after getting down 24-0 early, just come back with a vengeance, win by 20. So props to you, sir.
It was an interesting game.
It was. Listen, and I think it shows the talent level of the Texans players, and I think it showed the inadequacies of the coaching staff of the Texans.
I just think they were outclassed.
Well, I mean, Mahomes is a once-in-a-lifetime talent.
Yes.
And he rallied his team.
And at the same time, I do have to give you a lot of credit, and this may be probably your second greatest pick of this NFL season. Your Dolphins over the Patriots was quite impressive. This might actually be your best pick. You took the Titans over the Ravens. Titans getting 10 on the road in Baltimore. Baltimore, if people who listened last week, I said that their quarterback
Lamar Jackson.
Bernie Jackson. I said that Bernie Jackson was going to be the MVP of the NFL this season. He, along with his teammates, did not show up to play. Titans rolled over Baltimore. You took him getting 10 points. You didn't even need him. You were rather impressive.
Well, and to you, sir. And this was edgy. The Green Bay Packers were giving 5 points. You said to yourself, you know what? It feels a bit much to me. You tease the line down to -4 and end up covering as Packers win by 5. So you clearly saw that a push was potential with that -5. You teased the line. You won the bet. Congrats.
Thank you. And I think we both knew that the 49ers were going to pummel the Vikings. And
listen,
I think I might owe you a dinner.
You would have had to have been a stone cold idiot to have taken the Vikings last week. So
yeah. Well, that's obvious.
Yes.
Well, and also I have been a stone cold idiot in the past.
And now it is down to 4 teams, 2 games, AFC and NFC championship games all taking place tomorrow. First up, we've got Titans at the Chiefs.
Who do you like?
You know, this is a very interesting matchup, and I'm going to tell you why. That on paper, looking at the way Kansas City played last week, this shouldn't even be close. Kansas City is favored by a touchdown. It should be much, much more. The question becomes, can Patrick Mahomes and the talent on the field overcome Andy Reid's incompetence in managing a clock in a professional football game? I think with what I saw from Patrick Mahomes last week, I think he can. I'm taking Kansas City minus the points.
Okay. What about 49ers versus the Packers?
Oof. This is one I will say I've put actual money on this already in the sports books. I think the Niners can pull this one out. I feel that the line is exaggerated. I feel they're looking at the first matchup between these two teams earlier in the season, and they're giving that a little bit too much weight. I like the Packers getting 7.5.
Really?
I do. So where do you fall on these bets, Brian?
I like Chiefs and 49ers. 49ers looked very strong last week against the Vikings. I think the Packers, they're good. I don't think that they are elite. I think they have been elite in the past. This year, I don't believe so. I think the 49ers are going to roll into the Super Bowl. Whether they cover the points, I'm not positive about it, but I feel good. I'm going Chiefs over the Titans. I'm going 49ers over the Packers. I'm going with the both favorites.
All right. We shall see how this plays out. Good luck to you, my friend.
Well, good luck to you. I don't think we can wager on this because I already owe you quite a bit.
You're already. I mean, you're in the hole quite a bit. I would quit while you're ahead.
Also, keep in mind, you dusted on it earlier. There was the college football championship this past week.
There was LSU versus Clemson. LSU, can't argue with them as the best team in college football this year. Clemson came out swinging, defensive stand in that first quarter, and then LSU just kind of turned it on, and big win for the Tigers. So congrats to LSU, congrats to Louisiana, and we'll see how Joe Burrows likes being a Bengal.
Is that who gets the first pick?
That's who has the number one pick.
Yeah, he's. I think you said it great. He's got a 3-9 season rolling up.
So, big news though in sports this past week. Everybody talking about the punishment handed down to the Houston Astros for their sign stealing scandal, I guess you would have to call it. Their general manager and manager. Suspended for a year. They had to give up their first round picks in 2020 and 2021 and also fined $5 million. I'm sorry, they lose both their first and second round picks in 2020 and 2021. The stiffest punishment ever handed down to a team in Major League Baseball. To give people kind of a breakdown as to what happened here based on the investigation. Apparently in 2017, the Astros video replay room used live video feeds to mid-game to learn and decode signs used by the catcher. So they could call pitches. The signs were then relayed to a player that would act as a runner to relay information to the dugout. Sometimes Alex Cora, who was the Red Sox manager, had been working bench coach for the Astros during this, would call the replay room to obtain the information, which he would then share with players. They really got more technologically advanced along the way. They installed a TV outside of the dugout to make the process more efficient. They instituted what they called a quote-unquote banging scheme, which would involve hitting trash cans either manually or with massage guns to relay information. So one bang would represent an off-speed pitch, while two would indicate a fastball, for example. We have mentioned that they were a trash organization. No change here. General Manager Jeff Luhnow, while he did not organize or implement the scheme, he was aware of it, made no efforts to stop it. Manager A.J. Hinch was clearly against it. Apparently on a couple of indications, he broke the monitor to show his displeasure. Did not stop it. And then Alex Cora was more directly implicated. He actively participated and condoned it. And carried it on to the Red Sox, apparently, in 2018, who were investigated for sign stealing as well.
And the results of that investigation have not come out yet.
But the Astros have fired Jeff Luhnow and A.J. Hinch. The Red Sox have fired Alex Cora, and Carlos Beltran, who was part of the Astros team back in 2017, had been hired as manager for the New York Mets. he quote unquote resigned, although odds are he was forced out of that organization as well.
Now, here's my question to you.
Yes.
Baseball, and I say baseball, I mean the office of the commissioner, they have identified and confirmed that there was a cheating scandal that took place specifically during the playoff run of a World Series championship. They've gone after the team officials who were in charge of managing the operations of the team, general manager, manager, and they've not gone after any players that were involved. They have not in any way addressed the wins that this team accumulated under this type of operation. How do you feel about that?
You know, I feel that they should go after players because it very clearly states in the investigation that players were involved. Players were heavily involved in some aspects of the scheme to cheat people. I feel it's a little bit of, I don't want to say cowardice on Major League Baseball, but I don't know that Major League Baseball necessarily wants to go head-to-head with the Players Union, because regardless of how the Players Union may feel about it, they would need to defend any players that are punished due to this. The funny thing is that if you look at like the Twitter feeds of other players in Major League Baseball, all of them are just trashing on the Houston Astros. Right. So it would be curious to see if Major League Baseball did bring down punishment on players, where would the union fall when you have a significant percentage of union membership that might support punishment for people that are cheating? How does this play out?
But the sport has a history of cheating.
It does.
Everybody cheats. And
you've got the steroid scandal. I mean, you've got Pete Rose betting on baseball, going all the way back to the White Sox throwing the World Series back in 1919. So there's definitely precedence for it. And as we've seen in the past week since this scandal was revealed, you've got every internet sleuth out there looking at every possible clip of video to see what else can come up. I mean, the buzzer situation has been mentioned where, people are saying that they moved past the banging on, cans and things to the point of actually applying a buzzer to the chest of the players so that they could buzz for the pitch that was going to be coming in. I think if the public keeps up on this, I don't know how Major League Baseball gets away with not bringing down some sort of punishment on the players that are involved. The only way they avoid that is if they don't have direct evidence of the player involvement. It's very possible They could have just had, they obviously had enough to implicate Alex Cora. They didn't have any direct information that would tie the GM or the manager to the scheme, but they said it was evident that, there was just organizational failures all over the place. Would they have enough, if the union were to contest any punishments, if it went to as far as a court of law, do they have enough evidence to defend the players or convict the players?
I have no answer for that. And it's what I find, what the contradiction that exists in my brain on this issue is that the league, through their investigation, which included interviews of team employees, players, the managers, players that played against this, there clearly was cheating going on. There was an absolute advantage that the Astros received when they were playing home games by this video system. With that said, if you look at the statistics, the Astros actually had better numbers that year on the road.
They did, yes.
So it's
and it even mentions in the report that in mid-2018, some of the players felt that the sign stealing was becoming less effective in that, it was, making them overly aware. It was more of a distraction for the hitters than a benefit. I mean, the findings don't necessarily support that, but who knows eventually. But I mean, I think if you look at what stats did they put out there, and for 2017, I think it was Clayton Kershaw from the Dodgers. His stats during the World Series, played at Dodger Stadium, where he had an ERA under 1, and then he goes and he pitches in Houston, and his ERA was north of 6.
Right.
And so that was one thing. Like, how does one of the best pitchers in baseball go from throwing a gem when he's at home to really just getting pounded on the road at Houston?
Well, I think we've all been pounded on the road
on occasion. What I loved is the report specifically pointed out what a trash organization the Astros are, and not only by the sign stealing, but even going back to mention, and we talked about this on our podcast prior to the World Series, is that assistant general manager the Astros had, Brandon Taubman, who went on like this rant towards a cluster of female reporters defending reliever Roberto Osuna, who had been suspended for domestic violence prior to the Houstons picking him up, and the assistant GM is fired too.
Right.
Personally, I feel it needs to go further. I think Houston, as a franchise, should be forced to forfeit the 2020 season.
Forfeit the entire season?
Correct.
Okay, that'll never happen.
It'll never happen. But
I think baseball should vacate the World Series championship for 2017.
I wouldn't argue that as well, but let's think about this. So you lose your first and second round picks for 2 years. At the end of the day, with free agency, everything else, plus how often do we see first and second round picks just bust out?
Almost never. I think the last person was Steven Strasburg.
Right. $5 million to an organization like the Astros is... It's
nothing.
Like when these pharmaceutical companies get fined like $20 million. That's walking around money for them.
$5 million is what they pay one of their middle relievers.
Yes. So how else can you impact them by removing the revenue that you would generate for playing in the league for an entire season?
All right. No, I see where you're going with it. I think that's an unrealistic punishment, in the sense that there's so much money that's going to be lost in the impact. Think about it. What happens to the teams that are supposed to play Houston?
Right.
What about all the employees that work at the stadium in Houston? I just have a hard time believing that that's going to happen.
I agree, and that's just my thought. Although I will say, I think the road attendance for Houston games this upcoming season will be the largest in Major League Baseball history. Because what fan base is not going to want to go out to their team playing Houston to shit all over the Astros? And
yes,
I can't wait. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen until late September when the Astros visit Yankee Stadium, but that is going to be a shit show. And I will love each and every minute of it, because even though it'll be towards the end of the season, Yankee fans won't forget. They won't forget the bullshit that was done by the Astros player. And in credit to which sportsbook was it here? It was PointsBet Sportsbook, who announced yesterday, they take bets out of New York, out of New Jersey and Iowa. They announced on Friday that due to the sign stealing scandal, anyone that in 2019 wagered on the Yankees for a future or World Series, American League Championship or World Series future bets will be refunded in full because of the Astros controversy.
Now, what does that say, that a sports book has more ethics and morals than the actual team that they are accepting wagers on?
I think it says a lot. And this is what also kind of pisses me off a bit, is you and I are both Yankees fans. And
agreed.
The Yankees organization takes a ton of shit because, they just pay for the highest paid players. They open up the checkbooks and everything else. This is the thing. All the Yankees do is conduct business in a way that's allowed. They pay whatever the maximum luxury tax is in Major League Baseball, they pay it. Whatever the revenue sharing is, and I would have to imagine if you look at the revenue sharing agreement in Major League Baseball, the Yankees are one of the top contributors to these, second tier markets that don't make as much money. So what they do is they understand that sports these days is a business, and they run their business very well. They have their own network. Their merchandise is on point. They are a money-making machine, and they put that money back into the team. And you have these other teams that don't, that just take the money out and never spend money. But at the end of the day, we're not the ones getting caught trying to cheat the game.
Well, like you said, we play within the rules, even though it's a costly gambit for us to do so. I think as much as the disclaimer on the Yankees of they just buy their teams and whatnot, I think that's something that's happening throughout baseball right now. I mean, if you look at the Red Sox, they actually have a higher, well, maybe not with, it's a Jarrett or Garrett or Garrett or Cole, the new pitcher that we just signed.
I don't know.
I don't know how he pronounced his name, but that's not the point. The point is with his salary, maybe we're going up. But last year, the Red Sox had a higher payroll than we did.
And there have been teams in the past that have opened up the checkbooks and tried to put together super teams. And you see it in football. You see it you look at the NBA, what the Miami Heat tried to do with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. And listen, spending money does not guarantee you a world championship. You need to have... It certainly helps. It helps. It certainly helps. But, look at the Washington Nationals. They got rid of their highest paid player in Bryce Harper, which the Phillies just backed up the Brinks truck. Phillies don't even make the playoffs. The Nationals win a world championship. So it goes to show you that there's still something to be said about developing players. Look at the core four and how we won all those world championships, and how many of those people were developed within the New York Yankees system.
I'm getting warm and I'm getting tingly just thinking about the core four. Jorge Posada, Andy Pettit, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Bernie Williams,
Paul O'Neill,
Dustin Hoffman. That little Jew kid on second base, he could hit.
Well,
right, maybe not.
We will continue to point out throughout the year how the Astros are a trash organization.
Yeah, why not? And I think we're going to have a lot of help.
And also, quick question for you. This Jessica Mendoza, former softball player who works for the Mets and is also an ESPN commentator, throwing shade at the players that spoke to Major League Baseball about the sign stealing stand. Like, she actually went and I forget which the player it was that she was saying, oh, well, he shouldn't have talked to Major League Baseball about it. I think it was Nick Fears, maybe. She literally is defending the fact that she didn't feel that it should have been handled the way it was, and then she took a ton of shit from it.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. So this ESPN announcer, is she the one that did the Sunday night games?
She is. She does the Sunday night games. Now they're actually considering replacing her with David Cohn because she's getting a lot of backlash about this.
I was not a fan of her. I felt she was trying too hard, but that could also just be because I do not like listening to A-Rod play the role of this sports genius during the announcers. So she actually makes a comment that the Houston players should not have been interviewed, should have not given up the information on the sign stealing.
Well, she said that. So her comments were related to a former Astros pitcher, Mike Fears. And she said that, the fact that it doesn't sit well with her, and the fact that he talked to Major League Baseball made her sad for the sport. Like, she felt like almost like that blue line that the cops have. She felt like there should be that in baseball as well.
That's a hard take, and I'm glad she's taking shit for it.
Yes, and she's tried to walk it back, and it is not. She's not being very successful with it so far.
I wish her the best of luck.
Also in sports, I guess sports entertainment, pro wrestling lost one of the all-time greats this week. This is a tough one for me, and I know you're an old-school wrestling fan like me. Soul Man Rocky Johnson passing away at the age of 75. The father of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. hurts. It hurts me, Brian. It hurts me deep. I remember watching, this was back when I was 11 or 12 getting into wrestling, and Rocky Johnson was teaming up with Tony Atlas, beating the Wild Samoans for that tag team championship. I still remember watching that on TV to this day.
Do you remember what were the names of the two Wild Samoans?
It was Afa and Sika. Yes, that's
Sweet.
right.
Yes. Johnson was famous for his feuds. I remember Don Morocco, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Buddy Rose, Adrian Adonis. He had some great ones. But I think what was, him and Atlas winning the tag team title broke a racial barrier that had existed for far too long in that sport.
Well, they were the first African-American champions of any kind in the WWF.
Yes, and especially considering the fan base of the WWF, that was a major achievement.
Well, listen, much like the rest of the country, the wrestling has a very poor history as far as it comes to representation for African Americans. I guarantee you, were Rocky Johnson to have come along 20 years after the fact, he would have been probably world champion on the singles end. Because or if he was a white wrestler in his day and age, they would have pushed him more. But even as it was, he and Tony Atlas were the team to follow. I still remember Captain Lou Albano hitting one of the Samoans over the head with that wooden chair, and them winning the tag team champion. Little quiz for you: who did Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas lose the title to?
I have absolutely no idea.
That would be the north-south connection of Dick Murdoch and Adrian Adonis.
Dick Murdoch. I remember him.
Prior to Adrian Adonis doing his, when he played the role of being a homosexual later in his career.
Yeah, I don't, that didn't sit too well with me. Only because I grew up with him being just a regular wrestler.
Sure.
And then suddenly he stole this Gorgeous George attempt to simulate what Gorgeous George had done, playing the over obsessed with himself pretty boy.
But back to Rocky Johnson. One of the things I always respected about Rocky Johnson was he was a guy that knew when it was time to walk away from the sport. He retired in 1991. Didn't try to extend it on, unlike Tony Atlas, who went going way too long. I think suffered a lot of CTE. Kind of sad to see Tony Atlas this day. But Rocky Johnson passed away unexpectedly, apparently, due to a blood clot that traveled from his leg to his lung. That's not good. That's a horrible way. And so obviously, he is responsible for the birth of one of the all-time greats in pro wrestling, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And if you look at Rocky Johnson back in the day, you can see where The Rock took a lot of his character persona from. Very much mirrors his father.
That's a shame.
You're not a fan of The Rock? I got that impression.
Not really. Well, let me rephrase it this. I was not into. I didn't follow wrestling whatsoever when The Rock was active, and I am not a fan of the genre of movies that he has clung to. They're all action movies, depending heavily on CGI, stunts. He doesn't act.
I think I think you're embarrassed to mention that the Tooth Fairy is one of your favorite all-time movies.
Why would you say that aloud?
I will say this: Dwayne Johnson has done some horrible movies.
Oh, no. And the thing being is the fact that genre of movies where it's trash, but you're just going to keep putting it out and it's going to, sell, movie tickets, that's existed forever.
But,
there has always just been a desire to fill movie theater seats and, feed them with the lowest common denominator of gruel and people will show up for it.
You want some ridiculous numbers, Brian?
Sure.
So Dwayne Johnson movies have grossed over $3.5 billion in North America and over $10.5 billion worldwide, making him one of the most successful box office stars of all times.
Okay, now what movies has he been in?
You want a rundown? Listen, this is actually a fairly impressive list at this point. The Mummy Returns, The Scorpion King, The Rundown, Walking Tall, The Game Plan, Get Smart, Race to Witch Mountain, the aforementioned Tooth Fairy, G.I. Joe, Retaliation, Pain and Gain, Hercules, San Andreas, Central Intelligence, Mona, Rampage, Skyscraper, Fast and Furious 6, so Fast 5, Furious 7, The Fate of the Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, and of course 2 Jumanji movies.
I don't think I saw Get Smart. I saw that movie, but I don't think any of those others are the kind of movie I would go see.
Do you watch Ballers on HBO?
Is that the one with Fred Wooler? Or no, I've never seen.
Yeah,
Ballers.
neither have I.
No, I'm not going to see. I'm not a big fan of action movies.
But even Ballers, this may shock you. So Ballers was on for 5 seasons. It was ranked as HBO's most watched comedy in 6 years.
I just think it's because we're trash. I think this country is trash, and it looks for trash entertainment.
All right.
Speaking of which, I watched You on Netflix.
Oh, did you? We couldn't get through the first season of that.
I stuck it out because I wanted to see how it would end.
And apparently, they just came out with a second season.
From what I'm told, second season is better than the first.
Okay.
But it is. I was really expecting something dark, and it's not. It's fluff.
Is it? Yeah. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it was fairly predictable. I didn't think too much of it.
No, not at all. Very disappointed overall.
Although one new show that I would like to recommend is the new HBO show The Outsider with Jason Bateman, based off of a Stephen King book. First 2 episodes are available streaming right now. Third episode debuts tomorrow. Looks very interesting.
I read the book.
Did you? I did not actually read the book.
I have become a fan of reading in my older age.
I need to get back into the reading. I decided that this week. As I used to read a lot. I used to read all of Stephen King, and it kind of fell off there for a while.
Yeah, well, the difference being is the fact that I have got probably 2.5 to 3 hours of a commute to work and back every day. And during that time, I will, pop out my iPad and read a book. You don't have that luxury. You are driving.
I mean, I could probably read while I drive. I mean, I can multitask.
Please don't do that. I would like to hit episode 100 in a couple months.
I mean, it's down the pike.
Can you believe it? We're that close to 100 episodes?
It's hard to believe. I personally am looking forward to our 2-year anniversary extravaganza. I mean, 1 year was ridiculous with some of the accolades we got. I can't imagine who is in the wings to congratulate us on 2 years.
I hope we have Dustin Diamond lined up.
I think he's got some spare time. All right.
I hope so, too.
Anything else this week, sir?
Nah, I'm good. It just feels good to get back into the swing of things. I didn't think we were going to be able to do it this week. Let's pray and hope. If you're listening to this, people,
it means we made it. It means Brian fixed his computer.
We did it.
And if there's any IT folks out there, please feel free to reach out to us on RonandBrianPodcast.com, your home for all things Ron and Brian. Anything else for the fans this week?
Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself.
All right. And as always, check out our Patreon. You can subscribe on RonandBrianPodcast.com as